Hello, everyone. Welcome. I'm Marguerite Ro. I'm State Director for AARP Washington, and we're here with a segment on caring for caregivers. And today, we're very happy to have George Dix back with us. George, welcome.
Good afternoon. It's great to be here, Marguerite.
George, will you remind folks a little bit about who you are?
Well, my daytime job is I'm the clinical lead for Harborview Mental Health Services Geriatric Psychiatry Service. We provide services to older adults, their families, community organizations like skilled nursing facilities, adult family homes. I do a lot of training for DSHS and other organizations, including having a 25-year career at Edmonds Community College and the geriatric program. And I participate in various citizen advisory boards, such as Health Promotion Research Center at the University of Washington, focused on the mitigation of chronic disease and healthy aging, along with Aging and Disability Services Advisory Council, and again, other organizations that focus on the needs of older adults and their families.
So, and I also know you've been a caregiver.
I have on more than one occasion. Yeah, and I just returned from Georgia on yet another mission to finish up, hopefully, some caregiving responsibilities for a brother that didn't have a family of his own. But I was also a caregiver for my father, a long-distance caregiver in 2005. And interestingly enough, he and I were both going through chemo at the same time for our various ailments. And so all of that has really made me attuned to the needs of, as I say, the person whose name is not on the chart and the support systems around them. And I see every day the challenges and wonderful commitment that people have to their loved ones.
Well, I appreciate having you join us again to talk a little bit about what you've learned on your journey, as well as drawing from your professional expertise. And we've just entered winter and the holiday season. And so today we wanted to have a conversation with you about mental health and emotional well-being, because we know that for whatever reason, this can be a really difficult time of the year for folks.
Well, there are a couple of good reasons this is a challenging time. The holiday season creates all kinds of expectations, financial, social. It also brings back memories. Many of us haven't always had wonderful holiday seasons. And again, we come every year with these high expectations, and they're very hard to meet consistently. So there's history, then the weather has changed. And one thing that I really push, and this is something I'll say right now, is the importance of certain vitamins. We are not getting sun. We are not going to get a lot of vitamin D conversion. Most of us are pretty low, especially in the Pacific Northwest in that regard. And vitamin D is really important to cognitive functioning, muscle and bone well-being. And rarely have I encountered a vitamin that actually I can notice the effect. And so it's a very positive thing on mental health. So again, that helps mitigate this cloudy weather. And it's a long way till the sunshine. And I think I'm really aware of that. Those are some of the challenges that particularly make this time of year a challenge. Yeah.
So I think one of the things that I have most appreciated about you when we talk about this topic is that you actually start with not mental illness or or mental conditions, but really thinking about what does it mean to have a healthy mental life?
Yes, that's really critical. And it's critical to maintain that while as much as possible in the caregiving role. And I'll just use the reference that all of us who've been on airplanes have heard: put your mask on first, meaning make sure that you are in good shape, that you are healthy and able to manage the situation, because caregiving, it's a definite act of love. It's a tremendous commitment, often unknown how long it will last and what the outcome will be. So mental health, from my perspective, is characterized by a sense of purpose and meaning in life every day. For all of us at whatever age, it's important to have a place, a sense of place in the world. It's important to have goals that are meaningful to all of us. It's important to have hope. And I don't mean that in some superficial way, but that you can logically see how things will turn out in a positive way if I manage circumstances in one way versus another. Having social relationships, we're social animals. There's absolutely no two ways about that. No man is an island. And it's really important that we maintain and structure, because caregiving has all sorts of time demands, but make sure we structure some time for our own social renewal in the things that are important to us. They may be more limited now, but that's really critical. We all have challenges, so being able to be resilient in the face of those challenges, having adequate knowledge, which is really important in caregiving, to become more knowledgeable about our loved ones' impairments. As I mentioned earlier, sitting with my aunt this last weekend and looking at her medalist and discovering that what she had complained about coming through the door, there was a medicine there that she had not bothered to fill, and that's exactly what it was for. But that led to a much deeper discussion of her whole condition. So again, being able to facilitate a better understanding for our loved ones, our brothers and sisters who are also involved in caregiving, to help them feel more equipped. And again, sleep, I won't minimize that at all. Sleep is really critical. That was something traveling back and forth between the two coasts was really noticeable. Your body is on a schedule.
Do we actually need more sleep or less sleep, or what's sort of the recommended amount of sleep as we get older that we should have?
We should all have the same amount of sleep. Unfortunately, as we get older, that's a much greater challenge. In fact, I'll say this, as I've aged, that's been the most dramatic change, I would say, is the quality of sleep has changed. So you'll hear lots of stuff about sleep hygiene, and I'll recommend that you go and do some research on that and see how that fits into your pattern of life. We are discouraged to do napping, but darn it, I need a nap when I get home. It's as simple as that. And I get my nap. And I try to get those 8 to 10 hours of sleep a day, even though it's not perhaps all together. And caregiving is going to make sleep especially a challenge. So this is where it's really important to understand the factors that influence your own sleep pattern. And this is where we get other people involved. We can't do this on our own. So that's another thing that I think anyone with a healthy mental state recognizes, that you can't do it all by yourself.
So, especially when things are frustrating, and I think when anxiety sets in or depression sets in, it's oftentimes really hard to ask for help. Why is it so hard, George?
Marguerite, you've just hit the nail on the head. I often have reflected on how difficult it is for me to ask for help. And I sort of know better. And yet it's social expectations that we've been raised with. I think we have a culture that really focuses on the individual, and therefore we really sort of overemphasize that solitude, that need to carry the ball ourselves, rather than inviting others in to help. And let me change that word from help to be able to express their love for mom, dad, brother, sister, whoever you're caring for, as much as what you're doing, because it is an act of love. We need to allow others to also participate in that, in the ways that they can or that they offer. It may not always be what we want, but I'm not my parents' only son. I'm not my brother's only brother, and he needed all of us to be a part of his life, and all of us needed to share his journey.
It's particularly hard for men, isn't it?
I think men are, well, we aren't designated in that role, so that's why you and I know that caregiving in late life is predominantly female, but that's in our culture. I've been really pleased. I work with a number of other cultures, Russian, Chinese, Vietnamese, many African cultures, and those are not always the roles designated. And I've discovered that in other countries where especially women's roles may differ, actually the community is expected to be more responsible. How many of us know well our neighbors? And yet, in many cultures, you know very well your neighbors. They're very much a part of your life. And when others are not available, the community itself understands and values you. So one other thing that I would say is part of the artifact is we have a mercantile society. Everything is for sale. And so that's true. I'm a professional caregiver. And I know lots of other people who have many different roles that would fall under that heading of care. And so I think we also need to remember to take care. Just because you're paid doesn't mean that you aren't stressed or the same things that our family members worry about or concern themselves about. The professional also has those challenges. Hopefully more resources, hopefully I'll say detachment that allows for more objectivity, and also it's not dependent on old relationships. So a lot of caregiving is determined by historical relationship, who cares for mom, again, and roles in families. Whereas professional, that's not. I get to know people for the first time.
So whether you're a paid caregiver or you're a family caregiver, the reality is you're still under a lot of pressure and stress.
That's right.
And taking care of your mental health and emotional needs are important.
They're paramount because, again, if I can't renew myself, then what do I bring to the work and caregiver situation? I don't. We're not asking you to be a martyr. I think that's something too that's really important. I think a lot of people take on that role. No, that's why you get assistance with other people. And again, it's broadening your loved one's social life. Why do they need to be with you all the time? So, and that is, we all know that can become tedious for all parties. So, no, it's really important. I learned that with my brother. I was amazed at the people that were in his life. And when they came to visit him, he was a different guy. He took charge. He commanded these organizations. He gave them assignments from his dying bed. And then when they were not there, he was my little brother in need of actually physically being moved by me because he was weak and couldn't do it himself. And I got a torn rotator cuff as a result of that.
Oh, I'm sorry.
If you know how that is. But I'm just saying, that's what caregiving is, a deep experience. And it sustains itself even after, if it's the case of a loved one who passes away, there's still tasks to do. And I specifically reference widows. That is the most dramatic change that most people experience socially in their lives. And it comes at the end often of a long period of self-sacrifice and caregiving. So that's a double whammy for women. And so those of us who care for them really need to be attentive after the loved one has passed, and not to sort of say, okay, now things are easy, you can go back to normal life. You'll never go back to a normal life as it was before. So caregiving is a lifelong experience, in many ways.
Let's talk about a little bit about what advice do you have for folks to beyond sleep? And there are many ways to stay connected, right? So
Absolutely.
whether I think these days people maybe are a little more reluctant to pick up the phone, but you can pick up the phone or find groups online perhaps as well. But what are the things that we can do to nurture ourselves and nurture our emotional well-being?
So, who are the people in your life that you love other than that person you're providing care for? Structure time with them. Structure is really important. Not necessarily a lot of time, but it's something to look forward to. It's also your loved one wants you to be healthy as well. And so,
Good reminder.
yeah, it's really important. And that they aren't gone. They're still caring for you. And we don't want them to feel guilty about taking too much from you. So that is our responsibility. They can't manage that. Walking, I mean, physical activity is really critical. You're building up a lot of unpleasant chemicals in your brain because you're worrying a lot, you're not sleeping as well, perhaps your diet's not as good. And again, I'm traveling back and forth. I still have work stuff to do. So it's really important that you find spaces in your life for positive events, positive experiences. They're people that you have and love you, and they need to have some of your time too. They really do. And you need their time as well. Again, becoming informed is a really important thing. That makes us more competent in dealing with the medical systems if that's the issue around this person's decline. Let me think, what else? Again, back to the physical, I can't minimize how impressed I've been with people of any age and condition developing a stretching routine. I'm not going to use the word yoga because you know how people respond to those kinds of labels. But stretching is really important. So diet. And so know yourself. That was something I really thought about. You need to know yourself and what makes health for you. And that can be very individual. I make a comment about really minimize use of alcohol. Alcohol is a depressant. Don't use it for sleep because, yes, you knock out, but you don't get the quality of restorative sleep that if you didn't have the alcohol.
That's a good
board.
reminder.
And I'm going to say that about Benadryl and some of the other medicines like that, the sleep aids, because they actually reduce the acetylcholine levels in your brain. And those are the positive chemicals that you want there to be making cognition good. So be attentive to your own well-being. Figure out when enough is enough for you. And invite others, plan ahead to get involved in that situation. What do you like to do? What are your hobbies? What are your interests? Make time for those things. Yes.
So, you know, as I think about this, one of the challenges I think of caregiving, and this is true, caregiving or not, is oftentimes caregivers can get burnt out.
Yes. Absolutely.
What are some of those signs of being burnt out when maybe you should be thinking about it's time to take care of you?
So when I am doing anything to excess, and again, I'm going to go back to that temptation to use alcohol and other substances that just make you sort of zone out. There's something else healthier you can do in that time. Again, burnout is irritability. It is carrying the situation that you're struggling with into the world beyond the situation that you can actually do anything about. I have to say that to myself at 4 o'clock in the morning when I'm thinking those thoughts or thinking about clients. Like, what are you doing? You can't. None of this matters right now. There's nothing you can do about that. So really examine that for yourself. Try not to slide into repetitive, redundant dead-end thinking. And when you do find yourself doing that, access someone else. Again, that's the other part. When do you cry for help? And I don't want to use that, let's not say that extremely, but yes, don't wait till it's desperate and you're burnt out. When you're not sleeping, when you've lost weight, those are good signs. Or when you overeat. That could be
that's
another
probably my thing. My thing is food is a comfort until it gets really bad, at which point then I stop being hungry.
And see,
and I do realize that.
You know yourself.
Yeah.
And that's really it. And so again, caregiving can happen at any age. But I'm thinking that the caregiving we're particularly thinking of as with alignment with this organization is older adults.
Mm-hmm.
And so they have life experience too. We don't often ask them to participate. And so that's really important, is not take away their autonomy or their involvement just because they are weaker or ill or have cognitive issues. No, they still need to be participants. We really need, this is a shared experience. So burnout is neglecting the other people that you love in your life. That's not useful. You won't get their help that way.
Yeah,
you know,
true.
it won't. And also you're transmitting a message that their help is maybe not as useful or wanted. And so communication needs to be clear. I've always had someone in my life, a confidant that I could actually talk to about things, and sort of like my best friend is my therapist in a certain way. And so it's really important to access that relationship and get honest feedback, receive feedback in a constructive way.
And sometimes it's true too, right? That when we're at those moments, sometimes it's not that we're looking for advice from somebody else. Right, but a great way of supporting a caregiver is also just by listening and empathizing, right?
That's it. Really, because when that person is allowed to talk and not feel defensive, that is, you're going to give them some advice, correct them, et cetera, et cetera. I had the experience of being a parent for 15 months some years ago, and I remember the first thing that happened is everybody started telling you how to do it. Unsolicited, and that was pretty dramatic. And so, again, what I need is for people to just hear me, so that as I express what I'm struggling with, often a solution becomes more apparent because I can say it out loud, sort of hear the feedback to myself. Whereas if I contain that because I'm fearful of criticism or evaluation, then that's just going to run around and knock around in my head a lot longer before we get something done. So ask friends, this is what I need from you as some support. Ask people for feedback.
Yeah. And it's also okay to say, right?
Yeah, that's right.
I just need you to listen.
That's right.
I don't actually need you to tell me what to do or to solve something, but just please listen and just be there as a loving friend or a loving partner. Yeah.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So I know you have been going through a lot yourself this past year with your brother's passing. Again, my condolences.
Thank you.
And one of the things that I've so appreciated in your sharing is that, in fact, you have found, I think, joy. I don't know if joy is the right word, but certainly deep appreciation.
I'm going to use the word joy because I knew so little about this person. Excuse me. I knew him as my little brother. And my little brother, Terry. And that's what I say to people is that, everybody in the family, he's Terry. But to you guys, he's Terrence. And Terrence is a different person. I didn't know Terrence. And he was a phenomenal person. He turned out he was an election commissioner for like 15 years or longer. He was here. Ours was the only county in Georgia that went for Obama in 2008, and it was largely a part of him. On his part. He was a transit commissioner, and it turns out He, along with because of his relationship with Senator Warnock, we now have electric buses in Augusta, Georgia. Senator Warnock, when I entered his hospital room for the first time, the head of the election commission was there with a letter from Senator Warnock's office. I have photos of him presiding over an ecumenical gathering at Ebenezer Baptist Church, Martin Luther King's Baptist Church. I knew my brother had been an ordained minister, but when I saw him there, and among the people who was at that service was Arun Gandhi, Mahatma Gandhi's grandson. There were other very prominent persons. I was really shocked. I mean, he's got these people's names on his phone. I mean, he's a friend of this guy. And so I was aware of the many things as I went through the community, the businesses that he had helped start. Everyone knew my brother. When I went to probate court, as I said, even though it was a bit of a mess there, the judge said, you know, your brother and I have worked on things together. He was an amazing part of the community. I'll tell you, Marguerite, after he passed, and this was part of I'm sure my sleep deprivation, is that I went out to my mom's grave and I said, one of us, you turned out. You can be proud. You raised a great man. One of us actually well exceeded expectations. And part of it was because he was just a high school graduate and far exceeded anyone's expectations. And again, he was on the board of Georgia Legal Services for 14 years. And when the president of the board met with me, he told me, he said, you know, I didn't know your brother wasn't a lawyer for 6 months, you know, on the board. So yes, I was. The recognition of a life well lived, not more than well lived, was the joy, the discovery that I made in those months of spending time with him. But he was also always my little brother. There was always that too. The vulnerability, the deference to me, the older brother, it was amazing. So again, there was Terry and there was Terrence. And I knew Terry. I discovered Terrence. And I'm still, when I think of him, it is much more a joy of discovery and of a life well lived.
You know, I appreciate you sharing all of that with us. And I will say, I think that is part of the intimacy of caregiving. Mm-hmm. And especially if you are deep in caregiving, mm-hmm. when individuals are in fact mm-hmm. ill and need mm-hmm. your, you know, constant mm-hmm. support and mm-hmm. effort, it's sometimes hard to remember that. Mm-hmm. But if you can step away mm-hmm. for just a second to care for yourself and just realize that, you know, especially when you're caring for older loved ones, they really have gone through a long journey to get to where they are.
That's right. They have a life, and it's worth having them share that with you. So I've shared about my brother, but I've been, as a professional, honored to have shared the most intimate moments with many people. And in fact, I would say that is the treasure of my life, is that people have trusted me with their most intimate moments, not secrets, but the revelation of who they are, what it means to be alive and a human, and the broad breadth of that. That has been just a tremendous gift of working with older people. I could recite the people I have met. A guy who chased Pancho Villa across Mexico. I know Winston Churchill's cousin, and they look just alike. And he was a disowned member of the Churchill family. And they were almost the same age, so they weren't. It was like he wasn't named after him. I could just go on and on to the magnificent people, older adults that I have shared time with because they were in skilled nursing facilities that we consulted with, or in our case management program. Great musicians. So, yeah.
So thank you for sharing all of that. I think it'd be great for folks to know a little bit. Do you have some resources that you would like to point people to? We certainly have them at AARP. So let me first say to folks, especially because we are working with 211.
Mm-hmm.
So 211 is an amazing resource in which anybody can pick up the phone and hear and talk with a live person who will help get you directed to the resources that you need.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to start with the medical, because when people exhibit behavioral change, because that's my world, is behavioral medicine. We always start out by wondering if it's something going on in the body. That's the phenomenon called delirium associated with illness, cognitive change, emotional functioning changes as a result of some process that's going on in the body. And so get a trusted medical provider, and there are many specialized senior providers now instead of GPs. That's fine, but know that you're getting a specialist, a senior specialist, someone who knows what's different about an aging body. You don't take your kid, you go to a pediatrician, not GPs. And so geriatricians are really important, and services that have clinics that have those providers is really important. Many older adults belong to a spiritual community. And it's really important to find out what those resources are. I've done a lot of training over the years for an organization called ARTH, African American Reach and Teach for Health. And that's been a wonderful resource for me to be able to share knowledge. Again, since Terrence's passing, I've been really focused on health literacy, expanding everyone's understanding of their body. And then for social and so we say community resources, there's particularly I think of in Seattle area, Sound Generations, which is an overarching organization that provides and funds many services in the community. Meals on Wheels, various transit options, etc. So that's a resource. Aging and Disability Services, go to their website. The Mayor's Office on Senior Citizens, all of those things are resources that you and I have paid for through our tax dollars, and we need to access, and those things are out there. COPES, Home and Community Services through DSHS, provides lots of things in terms of care options. As you and I spoke earlier, there are financial benefits to be identified, whether that's, again, with your senior tax options that are different, various other kinds of discounts. I know we do, excuse me, some fresh food, coupons and things like that. And of course, AARP has many wonderful supportive things. Oh yeah, I used this last time for my trip. So yeah. 10% of a lot of money is a lot of money. So,
what a transition. Let me just remind people that regardless of where folks are in the state, they can actually go look up their area on aging.
Area agencies on aging.
The area agencies on aging, the AAAs. And they're there to help direct folks to resources as well. I just want to say thank you to you.
Thank you very much.
And again, to folks out there, for more information, please go to aarp.org/caregiversWA, so Caregivers WA, for more resources and tips. And appreciate you coming, and happy holidays.
Thank you, Marguerite. It's always a great chance to be here and share these thoughts, because health literacy is my thing these days. Okay, thank you.
Take care, everyone.
Thank you.